According to Bob Bethia and his miniature gene theory, I'll have to agree with the man, because it is a unique thing that a lot of people do identify with small objects. Mm-hmm. And it's been proven. I have books dealing with model soldiers and military uniforms, and in the model soldier book, for example, they've even found miniature soldiers that have been found in tombs of the pharaohs. Playthings for children have traditionally been always miniaturized rather than large, because children play with small things. And even myself, I've noticed, because I have 2 grown children now, but even when they were small, they always gravitated to small stuff because they enjoyed it, because they could pick them up. That's the name of the game with a lot of toys. My entry into modeling, I'll have to say...
or into the miniature world.
Into the world of small, okay. It would have to be when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, and it's Robbie Sinclair's problem, or fault. Actually, it was his father. Robbie Sinclair's father, they lived on the next street from me back in Winnipeg. He was a train conductor. He would travel to major cities in Canada, and in major cities in Canada, he would just, when he had time off, he would wander around, and he liked to go in hobby shops, bring them back model aircraft. And these were some of the first models back in the day. This would be about the mid-50s, I would suggest. Anyways, they came in this either ugly green plastic or red metal flaky kind of plastic. It was really strange stuff. Anyways, and Robbie would glue these things together and fly them around, and they were probably the common shapes, probably Spitfires back in the day. But he didn't know anything about decals. That is, how to properly put them on a model. And I knew that. I knew how to put decals on because I'd watched my father put decals on water skis. My dad dabbled in stuff like that. So I showed Robbie how to put decals on because he was just peeling and sticking them with model airplane cement and just making glue bombs of everything. So that was the introduction, kind of, to models and the model hobby. And I used to pester my dad. I'd like one of those plastic model kits too. And so one day we went to a hobby shop downtown Winnipeg, and I think it had a strange name, like the name of Gooch, something like that. And of course, we came back with a model, all right. But when we opened the box, guess what? It was a wooden model kit of a Sabre jet, from the Korean War time period Sabre jet. All well and fine, because my father loved wood, and wood is not my forte. I wanted a plastic model kit. So anyways, my father built a beautiful Sabre jet, put the decals on, and put it on this little wire stand, and we were both happy with it. But he did it all. A few years later, that I did actually get a plastic model kit, and it came from my grandmother, who lived in Vancouver. And she sent me this. It was a model of a ocean liner, the USS United States, I think it was. And it came in a box. It was made by Revell, and it came in a box, and she had also bought a bunch of paints for me, the little glass bottles of Tester's paints, and put them in the same box and shipped them at Christmas time to me in Winnipeg. There was more pieces in the box than originally planned because the little glass bottles rattled around so much they broke the plastic model kit into more pieces than necessary. So I was a bit disappointed, but it was a bit of a but, because my Uncle Steve from Regina was going to come and visit around New Year's. And Uncle Steve could do anything with anything. He was a genius. Anyways, so he took one look at my busted model kit, and he glued all the big parts back together. So now I had a complete kit, thanks to his repair. And I had fun with that. There was a lot of black paint involved. And here we go with a little Tester's bottle and a little Tester's paintbrush, and away you go, and you make a glue bomb mess of that. I think about the next model I ever put together was maybe 1 or 2 jets, and then I had what was the next? I think it was it was a surface-to-air missile called the Snark. It was red, and it had a special launching things it had 2 positions, up or down. It even had a small, it's about it would be about 1/87th scale, kind of like an HO gauge scale. And there was a lot of wheels underneath that mobile carriage. And the hard part about putting the snark together was it was red plastic, and you had to put all these long white strips of decaling on it. And I just had the worst time with that. That was terrible. I made a real mess of that.
So how do you think the hobbies changed now for a kid getting into it versus when you were getting into it?
It's huge. It's huge. Back when I was a kid, the word airbrush, well, you might as well be saying rocket ship or whatever. It was like the word, things like that just didn't exist. Mm-hmm. The only kind of paint that was out there was those little Testors bottles. Now, those are almost on the way out because they're enamel. They're an oil product, whatever you want to call it, oil-based product. Now everything's gone to acrylics, and there's about 7 or 8 or more players out there vying for your dollar for different kinds of acrylic paint that is specifically formulated and meant for small stuff. You go right from the cheapo craft paint for $1.50, $2 a bottle, to right up to your expensive $4 for a tiny little squeeze bottle of specifically colored paint. They have the right colors for the right scale of model. You name it, it's there. There's also aftermarket stuff made by the same paint people to give you that special wash of rust, that special wash of rainwater or fuel stains. It's just gone over the top. A big quantum leap from the time we were trying to stick decals on aircraft with the same model glue that glued the plastic airplane together. We've gone quantum leap on that.
So what have you embraced of all the new stuff? And what have you hung on to from the old ways?
I still have the old ways. I've still got some Testors bottles. I've even got a few of those cute little Humbrol tinlets. Don't get me going on Humbrol. I have all kinds of paint. You name it, I've got it. I've got all colors of acrylics, all name brands. I even have one-shot lettering enamels, which is part of the Sign World thing. That is, they are enamels, but their color intensity, their flow, their brushability, or you can thin them for airbrushing. But they have some beautiful colors, and it's very durable stuff. What you're trying to do with models these days is try and make them look as if they're real, as if the car that you just finished, if you had keys small enough, the damn engine would start and you could drive it away. You're trying to make a lump of plastic that looks like a human being. You're trying to breathe life into it with your paint job so it'll walk off the base that you've glued it down to. It's that kind of thinking that keeps everybody in them, I think, in the modeling hobbies going forward, is reality.
Yeah.
Trying to make things as realistic as possible, whether it's just going to be hung by a thread from the ceiling flying, or it's going to be on a base like a model car. Personally, when I do model cars, I like to make them look as if they can be driven, or I like to make them look a prototype of something real that I have seen or taken pictures of. There's one category called commercial vehicles. And I've done well in that because I've taken pictures of commercial vehicle and come up with it in small. And to that end, I've even added more value to it by having the correct color of paints, the theme, even making my own decals using computer program and printer and aftermarket specialty decal filming to make the decals so the livery on the side of the vehicle is just like the real thing that I saw in a parking lot.
One of your pet peeves is when people are weathering vehicles and they don't weather it correctly or they don't rust it correctly because of the way the vehicle was built.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a biggie with me. If you've ever owned a 55 to 57 Chevy, and lived in Winnipeg, you'll know where these older vehicles rust out. Well, you have to understand where those kind of vehicles rust from and how. If you're living in a place like the prairies where they use salt and sand, different times of the year, the ice and the snow melt and then they freeze. They melt and they freeze. And if you're driving your car, you're getting it coated down with slushy mush that's full of salt. That gets up underneath your vehicle and rots your vehicle from underneath up. By the same token, if you lived in a place like Arizona, where there is very harsh conditions thanks to the sunshine and the wind and the rain and everything like that, you rust from the outside down. That can be seen in any. You can look up rusty vehicles, Arizona on the internet, and you will see what I'm talking about. People just don't do enough observation, or they don't do enough research. And if you're going to spend your time creating a realistic vehicle, why not use all the resources at hand and do it right the first time? Because there's so many products out there that will give you the results. It's just a matter of how you apply them, where you apply them, and why. So, got to do it.
Yeah.
Do it right. Do it once.
Do it right, do it once. Exactly. Yeah. Now, what about your flats? You love your flats.
Flat figures. When I started getting back into modeling and painting, I really enjoyed doing military subject matter. I saw the movie Waterloo with Rod Steiger and Christopher Plummer. That kind of got me going. I'd always liked military uniforms, especially the ones of bandsmen and the bright colors. The Napoleonic period is one of the most colorful ever. One day I was down at a gun shop in Victoria, and I saw on the wall various pictures posted by some of the people that I guess bought guns or supplies or something there, and I noticed these little figures called, and they're known as flats, or if you want to use the German term, Zinnfiguren. And I asked the guy behind the counter, whose soldier figures are those? And he says, oh, those are Marty's. Oh yeah, Marty who? Marty Ullman. Oh, okay. Do you have his phone number? Do you think he'd mind me asking him about his soldiers? Oh, he'd love to talk to people about his soldiers. Okay, that started it. I met up with this fellow. He was originally from Germany, and he came up to Canada with his family from California back in the 70s, and he had and like most German people, they love miniature hobbies, and this guy was no exception, and he had a lot of these flats. He was bringing them in because he had contacts with suppliers, and he was bringing them in, and I showed him some of the kind of painting I was doing to military figures, and he really enjoyed that. So he gave me a French Napoleonic gun team. There was a cannon, and there was the caisson with the ammunition. There was a guy lighting the cannon. There was a guy loading the cannon. There was an officer. There was about 6 or 7 pieces to the whole thing. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. And so he gave these to me. I painted them up, and a couple of weeks later I went back and showed him what I had done. And he really liked that, so he traded me a whole pile of unpainted flats for painted. And the friendship and this trading kept going until one day he decided that his eyesight couldn't handle the flats anymore, and he wanted to get more into his trains. Okay, fine. So he unloaded many flats on me, and I still have most of them, and I have painted quite a few of them.
So what is your passion right now?
I've got about 10 cars on the go. They're all, I seem to like to, and a lot of hobbyists do this. You get started on something and you get going to a certain point, and then something else strikes your eye. Something else feeds your interest. And so you put that one in the box and you start on something fresh.